Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I apologize for running late.
Did you bring us snacks?
I did not. I'm still in mediation.
I would have forgiven you if you had
By
brought
the
us
phone, made
snacks.
2 moves on the phone, driving down here. They were, I apologize. It wouldn't move it, and I had to do it, and they moved it now. Today, we're talking about concurrency workshop, Madam Chair, so if you want me to start, I can start.
Our workshop has now begun, yes. Go ahead, Mr. Callen.
Remember, it's nice to see you all again. So this is concurrency. It's actually quite an interesting topic with the school district. This kind of things went to the definition. We talked about this earlier. It's kind of a generalized definition, and it's I like it. We talked about it earlier. Concurrency has a idea to have schools in place on the impacts of development. That's pretty much it. It's not required. It's optional to the state. We talked about that earlier. The points I want to focus in on here go more in the meat of the ordinance, if you don't mind. On slide 6, you'll see that the intergovernmental agreement is how it's implemented between the school district and the county and the 2 big cities in the county. And this was first adopted was in 2008. It's 37 pages. And at that time, it had Articles 1 through 13. We did some more study on this, and it had concurrency, the county did, and the cities did. It was recorded, re-recorded. The current agreement, though, from 2013 to present, takes the term concurrency out. It's more of a facilities agreement. It has some coordination, some data sharing, but it does not have the provisions for concurrency. The ultimate concurrency provision in any is to deny a permit if there's no adequate facilities. Your prior ordinance, your prior agreement did not have that, and your current agreement does not have that, doesn't have concurrency. So I want to get into that some a little bit.
So in the current agreement, the chief way to prevent it if the facilities are sufficient is to deny a permit.
Is to go to the county and have the county or city deny the permit and not have you be involved with that. Yes, you have comments and you get input, but it's less formalized than the earlier process. It all changed about 2013, coming out of the Great Recession, as you recall. There may have been a board difference, a change in direction by the then.
And neither of the municipalities have the right to deny a permit based on lack of facilities on these.
The current agreement does not have that, no. The current agreement does not have that. The current interlocal agreement does not have that.
To deny permit?
Yes.
So they cannot deny permit then?
I don't know if they can or can't. I'm just saying the current agreement does not have that. It may be able to have some of the legal theory to deny a permit that I'm not going to speculate on. But generally speaking, the school concurrency is not mandatory, it's optional. And right now you don't have a concurrency agreement, you have a facilities coordination agreement.
Okay, I'm confused because I thought you said that the method to prevent development based on lack of facilities was to deny a permit.
If you had a concurrency agreement, yes.
When you have a concurrency agreement,
Yes,
that's
yes,
the case.
Yes.
So under the agreement that we have right now with our municipalities, there's no concurrency, which we know,
Correct.
and they do not have the ability, or you don't know, you're not speculating, you're not willing to speculate.
Within that agreement, there is no mechanism for them to deny a permit within that agreement. There may be other agreements, there may be other bases in law that they could try to come up with, but I don't know about that right now. I don't want to speculate on that. I'm a bit concerned that, these things are policy questions, as you all know. It's worked out pretty well so far with the school district. We haven't had too many hookups we're providing for school sites at the point in time. We have a question of price, as we talk about. Sometimes that price takes the breath away of both staff members and the board members. I understand that. But right now, there is no, for instance, Polk County has a provision in there. If there is no facilities and the developer does not work it out, then they can deny a permit. Lee County has that as well.
Can you send me the agreement that we have with the county? Was that sent previously? You know?
We can get it to her, Mr. Way.
I know because at the last workshop I requested, I don't know, it may have, but okay.
I'm pretty sure we can share, but we'll share it back.
Thank you.
So So there's three agreements that you're kind of floating around on this. The first one's a 2008, which was changed in 2013. And then there was a modification that the General Counsel, Sarah Corn, and I have been going through back and forth on some, as a proposed new agreement. So there's three agreements out there. As to Chapter 163, 3180, there's been some slight modifications to this. We talk about the LOS, and you had these provisions in your original agreement back in 2008, concurrency service areas, those concepts. Concurrency boundaries and all that stuff. There's been some modifications in 2012 and 2019 and 2022. And they were slight modifications, but they dealt with planned capacity and being able to rely on planned capacity in the future. And those are kinds of, it's a very similar concept that they did in transportation, that if a road was planned within 3 years, you could take the capacity for the expanded road and use that for transportation, even though it's not there. So there are some provisions on that. There's also a provision in 2022 and also either 22 or 19, which allowed for a mitigation agreement by a developer to include possibly building her own school. So it's important. So that's kind of concurrency boundaries. Go to page 10. I sort of jumped ahead here. The 2022 amendment to provide mitigation proportionate to demand for public schools to be created by the actual development, contribution of land, construction, expansion, and payment of land for school construction of a charter school. There's a new language here in 2022. Creation of mitigation banking to sell impact fee credits. Now, I've been practicing law for since 1987, so 27 years, I guess, all right? Maybe.
37.
And that last one,
Otherwise, I'm 10 years younger than
Out
I
of
am.
10, 37.
37 years, excuse me. Creation of mitigation
He's a lawyer, not an accountant.
banking to sell impact fee credits. I question what that is. I have not seen that. I've looked around the state for that. Mitigation banking to sell impact fee credits. I mean, I guess creating a secondary market is a nice way of saying it. I don't know exactly what that term means, but that's in the statute. So there is an ability to create impact and mitigation banking to sell impact fee credits if the developer builds a school for the unit subject to development order. So if you got to a point where you could not, the school district build a school, the developer could step up, build their school, and then sell their impact fee credits to other people, evidently.
Well, would that be in conjunction maybe with the construction of charter school?
Not necessarily construction of charter school. It could be that part. It could, yes, possibly yes. But I think part of that is there. But here's the most important part I get out of the new requirement. School board shall notify local government that capacity is available for the development within 30 days after receipt of developer's legally binding commitment. There's a lot there in that one sentence that I don't particularly like as a lawyer, because what does legally binding commitment mean? And it can vary from one judge to the other what that means. Is that signed? Is that funded? Is it approved? There's all different levels that go, as you all know, in your process of what you do. Sometimes you approve an agreement, then you sign the agreement, then you fund the agreement, and every year the school board has to fund their agreement. So you're not really legally binded as a school board unless you fund an agreement. So that this one catches my eye a little bit. I don't know exactly what that means. I'm looking into that. Okay, but that's an important thing there. The school board shall notify. So there's an obligation by the school board, local government, that capacity is available for the development within 30 days after receipt of developer's legally binding commitment. That is, and the only good class I got in law school was, the only good grade I had in law school was A in contracts. And I'm having issues with this contract provision, what that would mean for you all. The other one
What's
is
the first class you take, Mr. Callen? Are you trying to say that it was all downhill from there?
I was I made the upper half possible. Let's put it that way. Still laugh about it. So 6H.
I'm gonna have to steal that phrase.
The 6H is the one I think you all need to look at. That's the meat and potatoes for school and school district and for concurrency. It allows denial. So the statute allows denial. So you have the ability to do this, but it has to be in your agreement. Okay. And the current between it says sites that they comply and cities comply with this provision. It does that. However, you don't have concurrency currently. And so I love this CH3. This is important to know. You do have the local governments have an authority to deny a development permit or functional equivalent pursuant to home rule regulatory authority, unless provided by this part. So they do say that your home rule does apply for local government to deny permits, except as provided by this part is the qualifier. So that's part B. You know what's happened, as you all know, the development interest is a very solid lobby throughout the state. And schools is a big issue along with transportation. And so they made a lot of changes to these laws over the past few years to keep the party rolling, so to speak, not to limit the development.
Yeah, and they put school board members on school boards.
But you know, there's some pros and cons to that too as well. So 2018, 2013 on page 13, this is the one that you all had, the 37 pages that you had in the original agreement, had concurrency Article 4, proportionate share agreement. These are terms that you all have seen, capacity facilities program requirements. You have local government capital improvement CIP requirements, school siting, concurrency review procedures, oversight. This is more robust than the current, and opt-in for concurrency is inclusive of state requirements of opt-in. The next one you have here is more of a cooperation type thing. This is page 14. You go from sections, you go from articles to sections. So a different format of the agreement. It's also a lot, I think, from 37 pages down to 17 or so. And so you have joint meetings, you have student enrollment and population projections. So these are coordinating of data, coordinating of scheduling of sites. It does have comp plan amendments, review LPA, rezonings, approvals. As co-location shares, some other provisions here I don't like, but I'm not getting too much detail on that. But there's no mention of concurrency, and there's no limit or no reference to a CIP, an LOS, or development review. There is no concurrency in the current agreement. Oddly enough, the drop in concurrency occurred in 2012 as the economy recovered. You never know when you time the market when you buy a house. You always look back and find out you time the market. And so I bought a house in Audubon Park in March of 2014, and that turned out to be the bottom of the market in March of 2012. That was the market in bottom of the market. So the recession lingered, and it really was bad from 2009, but it lingered on because there was no banks loaning money back then. Remember the fiscal cliff debates we had and all that. So until that got resolved after the 2012 election, then you had a recovery, a massive recovery had. Unfortunately, that's when you all got rid of the concurrency program and went to this program here.
Is there language where, because I was a rare board member, I was here in 2008 when they first drafted that in our local agreement. At that time, we had a deal where they were donating land to us. And all of a sudden, I left the board, and next thing you know, we're paying money, you know what I mean? So it's like, when did that shift come into play? So where, because I know that when they donate, you can't have it both ways. You know, if they donate the land, then the amount of money you do in your impact fee study is going to get reduced because it's no longer a cost that you show. But you still have construction costs and building materials and supplies and everything else. So it's not like you get zero money by them donating land. But that was a general practice. What made that convert?
They changed the statute on impact fees and made that back 2000 that period of time. There were a lot of amendments in 2008 to 2022 on impact fees also in the state statute that talked about credits and talked about the modifications, and you had to give credits to people who donate land. You can't require a donation without giving credits. Right. It's called the rough proportionality test. You have to, it's kind of to have a lawful exaction, you must have what they call a dual rational nexus, rough proportionality. You must have the development must generate the need for it, and what you're asking for them is in direct relation to what their impacts are. So if you have a school and you say, okay, I need school stations for 120 students, you can't require a land that will allow for 400 students without giving impact credits. There has to be a rough proportionality to that. And the Supreme Court of the United States really got into that heavy starting in the 1980s and forced it. The Florida Supreme Court kind of dragged along, but that's kind of a legal principle of fairness and equity in permitting that you must have a rough proportionality. And so that when that all got loose, and people just stopped dedicating school sites and donating school sites. They said we want credits. They realized what the impact fees were going up. Credits had more value. You know, it's kind of more mature of that. On page 14, we talked about those items. Okay, so on page 15, our proposal right now, we start our proposal, is try to get more into an improved version of 2008 in our local. Here's some of the highlights. The current proposal we have is about 45 pages plus or minus. We're trying to work on a staff working group, student population enrollment, sharing. So we're trying to follow the respects that Polk County's current ordinance has, which oddly enough followed your previous ordinance you had in 2008. So we're trying to do that. Article 5 deals with school selection sites. This is really important in renovations and site closures. That's part of state statute, but that's a separate action. Going back to that. Infrastructure, and then also, that's important because, you don't want to have someone give you a theoretical school without have the necessary roads to it. The other part we have here is plan review for new development. This is really important. You have a consistency review and a concurrency review. And these generally, consistency review is more of is like maybe 5,000 feet looking down when you have coming for a PAD, plan unit development, coming for rezoning or comp plan. A concurrency review will be more closer to the ground when you come in for, let's say, a plat or a site plan. Okay, those are generally the two types of distinctions there. Consistency is up here, just generally because in order to get property developed, you have to go through comp plan and you have to do all this stuff, and then get a rezoning, and then when you get really down to it, the school concurrency happens at plat review more. They pay a building permit, maybe a certificate of occupancy if they have affordable housing. Maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. But they really are the plat review and the site plan is really where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. Okay? And those two concepts are there in this proposal that are coming up, similar to what was there in the past. We're looking at some language here on the consistency. Again, we talked about that. The second bullet point: if no capacity at that stage, the applicant may choose to offer and may require voluntary mitigation to address that, which is new sites, payment of monies, or other mitigation plans consistent with adopted school board policy. And we're trying to give you as much flexibility as a board here because we think it's hard for us to draft an agreement to look at every situation that occurs. We have to give you some flexibility as a board to exercise your direction. That's why you're elected. And so that's what we're trying to do here. The government may consider consistency review of the approval or the timing of the development. So, for instance, if there is no school sites available, they can say, okay, you have X number of units in phase 1, you can go forward, but until that school site is available, you can't go beyond that. So those are kind of phasing requirements that some development approvals will have from time to time.
Yeah, because I appreciate that tiered approach rather than an all or nothing approach. Kind of like Mr. Rowe was saying, I'm not there to deny. I'd rather sit there and say, hey, we do it in phases because the infrastructure isn't up to par yet.
And what's really good, I like the Polk County thing is really, has some really good paragraphs. We'll get into in a minute here. But it really forces, what it does, it forces, by having that, it forces the developer, if we can withdraw, if we can deny or delay your permit or deny it, it forces you to be part of the solution to our situation of funding schools. And so the Polk County thing has a really good aspect to it. I think it's pretty good. We've talked about that. Sarah and I have been going back and forth on that. And we like that. So here on concurrency review is Article 8. This will be again a plat or site plan for residential uses. The county shall not approve a plat or site plan until this has been satisfied. So this will have to come to the board, and you have to, before someone can go forward in the county or the city to get their plat recorded or get their plat approved possibly, they have to get a punch stick, they have to get a ticket from the school board saying yes or no. Okay. And so this would be important. Again, this is not before recording, it's before approval. As you all know, plats get approved first and then they get recorded. And sometimes the recording can lag 2-3 months. So the approval is a discretionary act, and that's where we want to be here. The other part is on page 19. We're talking about the capital facilities plan and the DEFP. I don't know a lot of these acronyms, but some people do more than I do. Like Rhonda back there, but the LOS and CS, those kinds of things. There's some new stuff here that I kind of like what the state says is that if you have an LOS problem in a CSA, you can look at other CSAs too and maybe move some kids around. But if you look at other CSAs to get around concurrency, you have to move those kids. You just can't artificially create capacity. So you can't say, oh, we have a CSA, we have capacity in this CSA, but not here. If you're gonna use that, if you're gonna try to use that other CSA for capacity, you have to move kids there, rezone, is what they have to, basically. So they have some provisions in there, some kind of give you here or there, it gives you some flexibility again. Again, here, I'm kind of preempting myself here again, going to, sorry, to do it twice, page 20. If there's insufficient capacity to assign a school to serve, the school district can develop a proportion mitigation plan. It may exceed the LOS, then multiplied by the school factors for each type and blah, blah, blah. And it gives you some flexibilities of how to deal with this, flexibility, some options. Proposed land cost. I don't like this provision, but it's part of state law. It says proposed land cost not assessed in a proportion. If you put your own current land into a proportionate share agreement, you can't charge them for your land cost. And yes, I would like. Well, how do you replace that land? That's capital you bring to the table.
Right.
There's some stuff on the state statute I don't like, and so that's a state statute provision. And
We just
that's
don't
from-
propose it. We don't
So I
give
guess
them-
so that what it means is that the consequence will be you'll never put a school on your own land,
Never.
or you'll sell it to someone and then somehow work that out. But I think that it's odd. There's some odd things in chapter 163, 3180 from time to time. Overall, it has some good provisions.
Now, I got one other thing too, because we're having an issue now, with traffic lights and signalization with one of the schools that was built. When you put here, I think it was Article 6, for supporting infrastructure, there was no detail on that. When we say supporting infrastructure, will we be talking about who's responsible to what percentage for building a light? You know, because when they build a school, and most schools have buses, and if they have to do a left turn, according to how it's drawn out, we have to have a light because.
Your
you know,
standard agreement has been that traffic signalization is a condition preceding to close, and have an agreement to provide a timely traffic light. And what's happened at Knightsbridge is that was the worst case scenario storm about traffic signals.
But if we're amending a new document, I just want to have like tighter language to try to avoid that in the future. You know, what I mean? If you're
yeah.
going to create a new document, might as
Well,
well.
we learned something
We
there.
found
from
something
Knightsbridge,
that
but
existed.
It was the developer is building a traffic light to serve the school, as well as his phase 1 and phase 2 development and his phase 3 development. The developer, I think, was trying to get, or did have, like Lennar, build the traffic signal, build the road. The money had been set aside, $3 million for the road and the traffic signal. The developer started late, and then he had COVID, and COVID helped the supply chain. And then he got into problems around the field, going in for permits, when they had issues of underground pipes in all four corners of that intersection, causing conflicts just with the big mass poles. And so so finally we didn't get around to solving that problem until we got involved with the county and said, listen, under your county ordinance, any utility providers in your right of way is supposed to move at their cost to avoid that. And so then the county, all of a sudden, you don't have to move the lines now all of a sudden. And the cost to move the lines was $1.6 million. So you had a $600,000 traffic signal blossoming up to $2.4 million overnight real quick with his relocates. And that's when the developer tapped the brakes and said, I'm not incurring any of these costs until I know what's going on. That's what he did, I think. We've sued him for breach. He sued us. We sued him. There's some litigation right now. I've been meeting with there's always two different types of lawyers. Sometimes you ask your client, you want me to tear it up, or we're going to put the deal together. So I'm going to sit down with the Knightsbridge attorney, the attorney who puts the deal together, and see if we can come up with bring a deal together. We think it's best to try to put a deal together. They brought in an attorney to tear it up, and they brought him at the wrong time. And so we have some additional expenses because of that. But I think part of that was his fault. Part of it was other issues. And then so he's made some defenses and some claims that are out there. Whether the judge will decide if that's force majeure, act of God or not. We don't think it is, but he may be successful in that argument. But our position right now is it's all his fault. But we still want to work it out and see if we can work something out. But that was
COVID itself as the force majeure?
that or supply chain problems they've had since that issue, some supply chain
All
issues.
current contracts is being put
And then the
against
other issue,
pandemic,
the other
so-
force majeure issue they can claim would be that there was those underground utilities that no party expected at the time of signing the agreement. Now, our position is he waited too long.
It's not really force majeure.
No.
Yeah, he waited too long, so he waited too long. But we resolved that for him because we argued that he didn't have good enough consultants getting it through the process, but he wasn't happy when we said that to him.
So I guess the point of it is that's an individual case. A modified interlocal agreement with more specifications wouldn't prevent something like this happening.
He had some detailed times to start and detailed amounts and details budgets to be approved, and it was pretty detailed. Unfortunately, every agreement is based upon what you know at that time, and until you do some undergrounds or whatever, I think we'll include that in the future. We'll look at initial conflicts up front to do that in the future, to kind of hold his hand a little bit. But he agreed to that too, without and so right now we have about $666,000 in trust on that signal, and we have $1.2 million each on the road, and we're not releasing that road money until he dedicates that road to the city of Kissimmee. And then also we want to tie that into the traffic signals.
Now, what about turn lanes, crossroads, things like that? 'Cause I remember the new high school AAA, whatever it is. Then remember they wanted to build a road through it at the last minute. Do we want to have an agreement that have language that says that up front the city has to tell us what we need or not need or what's the requirement?
Dave and I are talking about having a new approach maybe with the cities and counties on those off-site requirements and saying we're not going to do those.
Right, because in that way, it's like a pre-agreement before it happens, you know what I mean? That's the whole point of doing the ILA. So if we can have a stronger ILA that says, hey, these are the requirements from the beginning, and then when we do build the school, then the city of St. Cloud gets cute and says, well, we want this, and we're like, wait a second, we have something to kind of hold them to.
Yeah, we don't want to, it's supposed to be to deal with that point of connection at that point. We don't want other points of connection influencing that, which is what happened, and we're trying to bring that in. The one way you bring it in is say, listen, if you're going to do this, we're not going to come back and ask for your approval. We're just going to connect their road system. And enough of it. So Dave and I are looking at approach to that with the cities and say, listen, we'll play ball, we'll cooperate, but there's a level to it.
But I think your point is right on, Mr. Melendez. It's probably something we can look at as we start. I think when Tom gets down to what our recommendations, next steps are, it is going to be essentially to approach them with a new format, a new draft of the ILA that gives us a lot of these rights that we might have lost in 2013 and want to recover, as well as improve our process going forward. So we can definitely look at points like those to add into at least our first draft.
And
Ask for everything and then see where we
It's
land.
broad language in the current ILA. It's not really that specific, but I think we're going to put something else in there that will get what you want.
And that way it's more consistent too. So every time we build a new school, we're not renegotiating a whole bunch of terms and conditions every single
You're
time.
preaching to the choir by saying that, because it becomes this constant battle. Yes,
Right.
agreed. We need to be playing on a very, very clear and very fair playing ground.
And then there's always going to be some exceptions. You can't think of every possible scenario, but at least let's get rid of the ones that are reoccurring or things that we see often.
Yes, sir.
Dave doesn't exactly use those words when he's talking to me on the phone about it. The mitigation proportion share agreement, page 20. This is some items that we want to put in the agreement, and we really want to put in that. Let's talk about trends in Florida. 22, Palm Beach County, Pinellas, Orange counties, they're kind of more built out, they're mature communities. You guys are unique. You and Lee County are the most robust in the state, and Polk to some degree. And they include deniability. They have a denial ability in the vibrant. I call them vibrant growth districts because there's a lot of growth there. They have that provision in the concurrency agreement that they use, and I think they use it as a way to instill cooperation. I think the word instill is really important. I think it does try to instill cooperation. And if I can get delayed, I got to be part of the solution if I'm a developer. I think that's important. And it does create a symbiotic process of denial options. So here are the options on page 23, other counties. Lee County says the outline mitigation options may include but not limited to donation or funding of land or construction of a school, charter school, and if the mitigation cannot be agreed upon, then the county must deny application based upon inadequate school capacity. Pretty tough language. But also, if mitigation cannot be agreed upon, so it softens the blow, so to speak. If you
See,
want to
so
go-
in Lee County, they still have donation on their books then.
Yes, yeah. But again, donation, even if you have donation, state statute's gonna make you give some impact grants.
Can you
Okay.
expand on the second point, charter school establishment? Does that mean, help me understand what that means?
The amendments in 2019 and 20 included the charter school part of it in chapter 163. And so the idea behind that is if the school district doesn't have sufficient capacity, then the charter school can step up and provide that capacity. That's an idea.
So if, for example, we were to deny development because we don't have capacity, that doesn't stop a charter school from coming in and saying, cool, we can do it.
Based upon the insertion of those terms in the state statute, I would say yes. How it's done, when it's done, where it's done, who, what, why and how, who, what, why and how, I don't know. So that the devil is details, but it has some broad language in the state statute, so there would be.
And there's nothing, this is more for our team, there's nothing in the language for our team denying a charter school coming into Osceola that would address capacity.
No,
Not to my knowledge.
not specifically for that, no.
A lot of times, historically, we asked charter schools to come in because we couldn't fill the capacity. That was the reason why charter schools got the big boom. That's why we got creative with Villalago, Kissimmee Charter. I mean, we were like creating charter schools because at the time there's no PICO funds to cover the construction and we were building too fast. So due to lack of capacity, it's the reason why Osceola County has a pretty good relationship with some of the charters that operate now, is because they were filling some of the capacity because we couldn't fill it.
Yeah, I mean,
So to deny someone
well,
to not do it because we can't do it,
well, here's the thing, let's separate this out. We have great relationships with our charter. So the denial wouldn't necessarily be because we don't have a good relationship with charters. So we would, for us, we want to look at school capacity. We want to make sure that it actually fills the need. So it would have to fulfill the need, I think is the big thing. If it doesn't fulfill a need, I'm not sure if it really helps us, but I also don't think that we can actually stand in their way.
Correct. So if a charter was gonna go open right next to one of our schools, I don't think there is a mechanism for us to stop that charter.
Not at all.
I don't think that's what I'm asking.
Oh,
And
sorry.
maybe I just don't understand. And this is very confusing. This is definitely not my forte. And I'm okay with saying that and asking questions even if they are not articulated correctly because I need to make a decision that I'm comfortable with. I think what I'm saying is using the school district as a mechanism to stop growth or to mitigate growth, which is what I think the conversation about even having this agreement is, does that still matter if a developer can be like, whatever, I don't need the school district, I'll just go over and ask X, Y, or Z charter.
That depends, they have access to capital. That extends, they have access to time and management to put it on time and all that. So they have their own limitations, charter schools do. They have their own lag time too as well to get up and running. These are owned by people, these are managed by people, they're fairly sophisticated.
Oh, here's a good question along her train of thought. I think I'm tracking what she's saying because I'm not in Terry's head. I can only hear what she said. That's a great point. If a developer comes in and they usually set aside land, right, to build a public school, at what point can a developer go, you know what, I'm not going to set aside land for the public school to build it. I'm going to go ahead and set aside that same land for the charter school, because that's the biggest problem with charter schools is identifying land to build on, because especially if you're building out, where you're going to get it from. So that is a very scary point that Ms. Castillo brought up, is if, when a developer wants to develop a new development, they're not going to the school district first. They're bypassing us.
Well,
No, I'm not
your
saying they are. I'm saying the
current-
potential
your current-
possibility
no,
of
your
bypassing us
your
to go
current-
straight to the charter and negotiating with them. Versus-
The current agreement we have is this, our current agreement we're drafting, the current agreement you have, and the prior agreement you had, what we're proposing, is that this concurrence review has to be with the school system only, and does not be a concurrency system for a charter school. Only if you don't have capacity, and you're unwilling to give capacity, then the charter school.
Like if we disagree, can't come to an agreement and say, okay, we're done, then.
It can't be
goes
the
on.
starting point.
Yes.
for them.
And you don't wanna have it, the school just engaged in
We would
a.
have to.
I
we
know,
would
but it
have to-
doesn't, I don't think I'm saying that it matters if it's at the starting point or the end point. The question is, the point of having this is to mitigate growth. If the only thing that's stopping a development is not having a school, and they're like, okay, they've denied us because they don't think that there's capacity, there's nothing really to stop the developer from just having a charter school.
That
Is
is,
there?
that is
So I can-
correct, that is correct with, I'm sorry.
One second. If you don't mind, I just wanted to just share what she's saying.
The current process is any development, the application that comes in for 750 or more.
Come up to the
dwelling
table
units.
so it's-
Yeah, why aren't you already here? You're the expert. Yes, you are.
So the current agreement that we have with the counties and the cities is if a residential development comes in for 750 or more units, our review of the application tells them that we are requiring the developer to come to the table to enter into a school capacity mitigation and funding agreement with us and then we state whether it's a K-8 or a high school site. And the counties and the cities have been supporting us on that. And they will withhold the approval of the SDP at our request until we get that agreement signed. Now, where they will take a different angle is if we get all the way to the finish line and everybody has come to the table, but for some reason the school board walks away from the agreement, then they will say the developer met their obligation by providing the site, but the school board refused it. And at that point, they will let the developer move forward without the commitment of the school site. So right now, what has happened when a charter school has approached a developer, we have never given up our site for a charter school site, and the developer doesn't want to give up two school sites, so we've always retained the land for our school in lieu of having to give it up. So they won't give it up without our approval to rescind our site to allow the charter school to go in.
How would this new proposed agreement change that relationship?
We're going to include language that mirrors the 2022 amendment to Chapter 163, which says if the developer tenders a written legally binding commitment to provide a mitigation proportionate to the demand for a public school, but we can't provide the school, then they can pursue a charter at that point. So it'll be an item of last resort.
So there's not, I mean, again, this is not my forte.
Sure.
It seems like, what's the point of this if they can still build? We're not stopping anything.
Again, the question is, well, no, it's a question of when that school comes online.
When it comes on.
That's the question, when it comes
Okay.
online. So the building permit can be held until that school comes online to meet those impacts.
So we delay them starting their
Can delay them,
construction.
yes. And this goes back to where I want to get back with on page 22 again, Polk County model, 23. I like this approach.
Which should be the intent of the school board. Like what I was kind of saying earlier, our job isn't to stop developers and kill developers. We're the school board. We're not the county commission. You know, our job should be just delaying it to allow our infrastructure to catch up. So if a
The
school's
Polk
built,
County model
they're
on page
satisfied.
23 has, if the development does not meet school concurrency, this is how they're drafting it. I think it's actually pretty elegant what they do here. And is not issued a certificate of school concurrency, then the school board shall place this development in a queue of pending project for 18 months. That's a nice way of saying you've been delayed. And so that's kind of that compared to being denied. And then if conditions change that adequate capacity becomes available to serve a pending project, then it's issued a determination of adequate school capacity. It's a little bit more, the poll, and I don't know if they've used that yet or not, I've got some calls in them on that, but I like that provision. It just gives you another tool in your toolbox, when it push, because what we're trying to do is provide for a situation where someone gets to go forward and build all these units and there's not a school there available, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So there's a couple loose ends that be tied up here, not a lot, but a few. And one of them is, I think this language is really important that you'll put in your new agreement.
So for me, the advantage to the concurrency language is you deal with all developers regardless of size. Our current agreement, we're only dealing with developers at 750 or more. Because it's really hard to ask the guy building 100 homes, can you give me 20 acres? So somewhere it has been set that the 750 is our trigger, and that's what we use. So concurrency allows you to negotiate with everybody, 2 units to thousands of units. We review now every application.
We do review every application
Right.
regardless of size,
But
but we can't talk to them about
now
mitigation.
you can find a
until the
negotiating point for the smaller builder who doesn't give you a whole site, but there's other options that you can request of them. So you kind of capture the smaller guys, because enough smaller people will sooner or later equate to a big project.
And that's
right?
actually what
So those are
happened.
your assemblages.
And just for historical purposes, that's not just a boogeyman theory. I think that's what happened on Arcusi, right?
That's
At
what
the
happened
time on Arcusi
Johnson
Road,
Jack
there was, I think 900 was the number. I think because that number changes. I think at
It
the
was
time,
5, we went to 750.
and then people knew it. They knew exactly what that number is. So they
put your
built a
SDV
community
just
for like
below that.
50 units less to never trigger it, and all of a sudden they built all these units and you never got land.
So
You know?
3,000 units might sell to 500 developers. So they all went in under the trigger, but at the end of the day, we ended up with 3,000 homes on Johnson Jack.
And that's where concurrency. Sorry, Mr. Wade, you were going to say something about the growth.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, he's right. Our job is not to control growth. That's not, we're getting outside of our scope. Our job is to provide the facilities for every child to be educated to a specific degree. So now, we need to take into consideration that if we cannot do our job, then we are in violation of our constitutional duty. And in my opinion, as much as I harp against this uncontrolled development that we're seeing now, the developers are not the bad guy. The bad guy is the people who are in charge of planning our county in some kind of way that resembles a planned growth, as opposed to just chaotic. Everybody's a grab bag of money from the municipalities. I'm going to sell my land to the school district because they pay the best, and all my friends are on the school board, and it makes it very easy for everyone to make all those things happen. That's what needs to be addressed in these concurrency agreements, so that everyone comes in and is playing by the same tune, as opposed to just. And it's also not our job to stop charters either. Right? I mean, and it doesn't matter whether that happens at the beginning or the end. Controlling these aspects or the environments are not what our obligations are. Our obligation is to provide education, right? And once it gets to the degree where we cannot provide effective education, then we have to take an action to make sure that we are. That it's not necessarily to control growth. That's not our job. And I don't want to be in that aspect, because here's the thing. I'll end with this, and this is, I have such little faith that the leaders of this county, including the school district, make the right moves for the right reasons, that I would hate for us to write a concurrency agreement that puts developers at the mercy of a bunch of politicians who are making decisions for their friends who put them in office. That to me is not the right agreement at the end of the day for concurrency. It needs to be a service to the public, that we're doing this so that we can make sure that we're providing effective education to the community.
And we're trying to make sure this does not evolve into like a taxi medallion ordinance.
That's exactly where I'm getting at. That's exactly the right
So
example.
we and be a market constraint or whatever. So we're trying to be mindful of that. You could very well, we've talked about this, you could very well end up having more charter schools if you have a review for properties less than 750. Because there may be that niche market where you have charter schools may be needed because you can't provide something there. But we'll talk about that some more.
But if the market and community determine that,
That's
right.
That's what we're talking about.
Right. So I do want to share this. In all of the discussions that we've had, it's never about. I never want to use the term stop growth. It's not that. It's that Tom used a really good word, which I forgot what it is, but it's pretty much encouraging them to come to the table to have a discussion. Instill. So we're instilling that. And so if let's say an STP comes through and we see it's 750 and we know based on our projections that we require a school and they're not willing to talk to us, if we can have the ability, which we don't right now, to say, hey, listen, we're not going to approve this because based on our calculations and our projections, we require a school district here. The county is going to say, hey, listen, until you get the school site done, we can't move forward. And that's essentially what it is. We don't want to stop it. We just care about that 20 acres or that 50 acres that we want to acquire, which allows us to deliver that mandate. Because my biggest fear is exactly what happened in Narcoosee. Although small one comes along and then suddenly I'm struggling to, which we still are. Ron and I have been literally looking at maps of that eastern side of the county, trying to figure out where we get 20 acres because we require another school in that area. Harmony Community, Narcoosee Elementary, that entire area, we're looking for it. And there isn't a developer at 750 right now that is at the table for us to talk to say, hey, listen, we need this. Because if they did, we would be, listen, we need it next year so that we can start building just based on that side of town. So we're trying to avoid that in the future. It's never to stop growth. It's just really...
I also use the term mitigate, which is not the same as stop.
I like
so
that.
I think it's really
I
important.
like that,
to,
right, yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's not even to mitigate because it's really, our job is not to impact growth. Growth is its own separate issue. Our job is to deliver education where growth is occurring.
And we want a good mechanism to be able to do that for the school board.
We're gonna try to use a language from Polk County ordinance that's very, encouraging and very consensual language that brings both parties.
It is a partnership.
Now, the other two concerns are, it's like what you're saying, following that to conclusion, then when you find a site, then all of a sudden it's gonna be a greenfield site that's not prepped, and then we gotta spend all this money prepping it. I kinda like you convinced me on that, is if we pre-negotiate
Absolutely.
prepping that site, it makes it so much easier than have to worry about,
It is
doing
so much
to get
easier,
it ready.
correct.
Now, the only thing is, on a wish list, if we're gonna create something, let's create a wish list that's stacked in our favor as much as possible. Again, not to stop it, but just part of the considerations is if the level of service in state statute, including the Florida rule, which I read a couple times, does allow us to look at not just student stations, but other things, like teacher vacancies and also bus driver shortages. Whatever that number is, that's a fair number. We should sit there and say, like, if we're at 70% capacity of our bus drivers, if we build a new school, we're not going to deliver a great education because there's nobody to get them to school. So whatever that number is, I'm not here to put a hard number because I'm not staff, I'm not an expert in that area, but I do know that if you have a critical shortage of teachers or you have a critical shortage of bus drivers, you're going to have problems delivering a quality education to
Well, right now,
students.
the concurrency thing talks about capital, okay, and so that's more operating, whatever. But Frank's asked me to look into that and see if we can come up with an argument to do that. But right now, the statute is limited to capital. Impact fees is the capital. We can't charge an impact fee for operating. And so I see what your point is. At that point, you go to the county and say, listen, I got a moratorium because I don't have adequate teachers. That may be a solution.
Correct. You're right, because you can't, what's the dollar value of marketing
Level-
that? So like,
level
how do you
service.
mitigate that?
But we're gonna look-
But instead of mitigating it, maybe that's one of the delay factors.
I wrote that
you know?
down again. We're gonna look
Yeah.
into that.
So you're right, and so it's not, but yeah, the point is it's just a delay factor. If we're strictly short, then we should have a right to say, okay, then that's a 6-month
You
delay.
can use words like
We have-
phase and stage.
Yeah.
Those are better words than delay, deferral.
Yeah, I just hope that if the school district is drafting something to look at, let's draft an aspirational document, let somebody else exit out. But for us not to sit there and say that, job vacancies or teacher vacancies don't impact school instruction is not being honest. That's like too conciliatory to the other party.
Let's, I have a tie in the impact fees there on page 26. I want to get with you. Okay, I'm sorry. This is just the credits, the impact fees and CSAs and all that, but we're looking at, you have an issue right now that you're, on page 27, your issue is that your impact fee ordinance is based upon land costs of $90,000 an acre. Those days have come and gone. They may come back, but you never know, but right now you're paying $200,000, $350,000, $400,000, $500,000. So what we're coming up with, and is maybe an idea here, is that give the developer a choice. if you want to have your impact fee based upon $90,000 an acre. Now, understand, the land cost of an impact fee ordinance is only about 6% of the overall ordinance. 80% of that is the construction cost of the school, and then 5 or so percent is the transportation. So when your land costs go up from $90,000 to, let's say, $400,000, they've gone up 4.5 times. So really what's happened all of a sudden is your impact fees have been diluted by giving credits. So for if you give credits to buy a property, for every 4 houses, they get a free house of an impact fee, basically. 25% increased cost. So what we come up, we're talking about this, and we had a meeting with the guys at the county, Brown and Stengel and a few others last week talking about this. We talked with the housing people and our edits to the impact fee ordinance from last fall. Finally getting to the county delayed this until recently. So they like the idea of that the developer has a choice. If they sell a site to the school site for $90,000 an acre, then they get the impact fee on that schedule. But if they want to do a market rate number, if the market rate is above $90,000 an acre, then the impact fee for development is adjusted for that change, the land component of that. Excuse me.
Oh, so that doesn't require an impact fee amendment then?
No, that's a private agreement that would exist between.
So I was gonna say, because the governor put in a
That's
new
the
law
idea,
that
so
we,
give
once we
choices.
establish impact fee rates, we
Give
can't change
choices
it
to
every
them
4
and all
years.
that. So listen, so we want to prevent the problem where you're buying land at $500,000 and that land at $500,000, you're issuing credits, and the credits are based on about 25% higher or 30% higher than your actual impact fee ordinance. Because you have land and your impact fees are based on $90,000 an acre. So using credits against impact fees, that will be 30% higher number. So those are kinds of some of the things we're looking at. The county liked that. Stengel liked that actually. I was kind of shocked. And a few others liked it. So we're going to ferret that out some more in the next drafts. We told them to get back. Scheduling wise, we're looking at scheduling wise of getting something to them back in the end of August, if you don't mind. They want us to go forward with get something to you as a board, both on the impact fees sometime for an October board adoption, if you're okay with that. And we're going to bring a schedule with you on that too as well. That's more Rhonda and Dave. But I guess the concurrency and the impact fees can be done together, and they're still under their moratorium.
And so these conversations, or the work you've been doing, you've already been having conversations with the county and the 2 cities in order to make
Haven't
sure
done the
that
2
we're not
cities yet, but
doing
we're
this
setting
for
it up right.
nothing?
We're setting up the cities right now.
Okay.
We dealt with the county first because we wanted big buy-in with the county. Both the housing department at the county as well as the land development folks, and they both seem to like what we're doing here. Putting in there about conversions, about the hotels, because you're going to see a lot more development being converted, whether it's office or whatever, to residential going forward. And so we'll put some stuff in for conversions, put the new amount for the studio apartments in there to encourage that. And also, I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, but they didn't like the deferral and the installment plan of fees. They pretty much told me, though, said this is a bad idea. So I'll come back to you as a board to show you what we were thinking and what the county staff said why they thought was a bad idea. And then we're going to probably seek your direction on that. But they're not going to. They really don't want to go forward with installment plans based on that, because always they say if you don't get a building permit, you never get it, or a CFO. And so they were concerned about us doing some payment plans down the road. The final affordable housing tie-in into this is that affordable housing in the state of Florida is really generated towards a developer-driven project with tax credits and with SHIP and sale funds. Some people think the state of Florida's approach is not good. They should have more approach affordable housing by not-for-profits owning it, bona fide not-for-profits, and in perpetuity, and then providing some type of impact fee credits or impact fee avoidance because of those. So we're still going to try to ferret that out. We don't know if we're going to be able to solve that issue today, but we're still going to look at that. County staff had some approaches to that. Again, they didn't like it. So trying to do something innovative.
So, Tom,
They didn't make a comment to me, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
They said, you understand something, you're the largest employer in the county, and most of your teachers qualify for affordable housing. They made that comment to me in the meeting. And so, for workforce housing. You know, you have the 30s, you have the 40s, 60s, 80s, and 110% of the AMI. And so the county staff really thinks the school board needs to get behind this affordable housing, workforce housing thing, as many of your employees who start off qualify for it.
Yeah, I mean, to Sila's point, that's.
Yeah, I see those things as two different issues though. Like if the school district wants to do something on its own for that, that's separate. But to uniformly say, okay, we're gonna get involved in affordable housing, period, you know, in helping provide any applicant that wants to do affordable housing, you know, I don't think that's really our.
We were trying to look at
That's stretching
alternatives
us, that's
for
stretching.
delay or deferral of impact of the school education impact fee component.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I don't know if we can do that.
Correct, yeah, and
It's
so
just something that
if
we
they're not,
know.
and if they're not willing to do that, I'm not willing to do anything else then. And that would, because I still need the money, because even in homestead exemptions, there's always a carve out for schools, you know what I mean, versus the county, because we need our schools to get through.
I raised that flag in front of the county on a team's call and they shot it down pretty quickly, so
Yeah.
we'll try it again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Callen. Thank you, board members. I think that and please correct me if I'm wrong. I think that the direction is to continue with your draft that you're working towards, continue to engage the municipal governments in this as a collaborative effort, just to kind of level set where we're at as we go ahead and go through our drafts. And then the expectation is that we come back in, did you say August?
Late August, for ultimately
That's what we need with that.
some more direction, give you a
End
first
of
draft
August.
by late August.
So
Adoption
you
in
want,
October.
so you want, all right, so the first draft we'll do in a workshop in August. So Tanya, that will need to be scheduled sometime in
You
August.
wanna, as a possibility, do you wanna propose the initial draft with the business advisory board and kind of get their input?
I
Because
would
they're
prefer,
appointees.
I would
Because
actually.
they're appointees of the county as well.
I get it, but their primary responsibility is sales tax focused. I don't believe that is, I think that would take a critical step out of the equation and not get you what's been created
Already.
by them. That's, ultimately, this is your call. This will be published. If you want to confer with folks on the Business Advisory Council and get their input prior to our workshop, then you can go ahead and do that. But to provide this to the Business Advisory Board prior to putting it in front of the board I don't think is the right move. That's just, that staff's recommendation is to bring it to you first. And it'll be public facing, and if you want to engage the Business Advisory Board, you can. I don't, they haven't been part of this conversation.
They haven't seen the beginning, and also
They
they're
haven't.
gonna be stuck in the middle of it. Gotcha. Alright, I agree.
I think the better time may be September.
Yeah, the preference would be September. Mr. Callen has to go research the laws in Ireland for 3 weeks.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he's.
Yeah.
Oh, are you going on a trip?
Oh, listen, don't
I
get
figure
me
he's got a
started.
court case in Ireland.
Sure, it's for
Well,
work.
So you have
We'll have to add
September-
another workshop for us to tell him about his vacation. Yeah, what?
September 10th or
It's a
September
checklist. I'm
24th?
getting old.
September 10th or 24th, Tommy.
September, that's fine.
September 10th?
10th or 24th. We have two board meetings.
24.
24th.
The 24th, at what time would you like it?
What time do we have available?
The only thing we have on that day is the meeting at 5:30.
Okay, so, well, let's do 3:30, which means, Mr. Callen, we start at
3:45.
3:15.
3 o'clock for you. 3:30 for everybody else.
I won't schedule it. There won't be another meeting.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Callen, this workshop's adjourned.
Thank you.
We have a meet and greet